Jazzy observes that rather than Shadow being annoyed by Sonic's personality and harbor hate for him, they consider their true dynamic to be one where Shadow is unsettled by Sonic's nature.
Not to cut him off, but oh, we're going there, huh? Okay, hold on, wait. Let me lock in. I wasn't expecting this. Hold on. We're talking about that?
Observes that rather than Shadow being...
Last time we watched a Chari 5 video, and it was pretty good. And I stumbled across another one. And this one is, I've noticed something about the... I'm not subscribed. What's up? Because Brody got some good content. I've noticed something about the bosses in Shadow Generations. Now, I've heard some people talk about how, like, yeah, like, the bosses are, like, all different versions of Shadow or something like that. And I thought that was pretty cool. But I wonder if he has anything else to say about it, because this is a 22, almost 23-minute video. So let's see what Chari, or... Actually, it's funny. I'm mispronouncing his name. It's Chari 5. I thought it was Chari.
Recently, I came across this quote tweet from an artist by the name of Jazzy Adams about a comic made by fellow artist Daya. In it, Jazzy observes that rather than Shadow being annoyed by Sonic's personality and harbor hate for him, they consider their true dynamic to be one where Shadow is unsettled by Sonic's nature.
Not to cut him off, but oh, we're going there, huh? Okay, hold on, wait. Let me lock in. I wasn't expecting this. Hold on. We're talking about that?
Observes that rather than Shadow, they consider their true dynamic to be one where Shadow is unsettled by Sonic's nature. You see, in the comic, Sonic says his classic line about being a guy who just loves adventure, and we find out that Shadow can't even bring himself to meet Sonic's eyes, thinking to himself that that isn't true. Being a guy who just loves adventure is simply how he defines himself, but truthfully, even more than that, Sonic is someone who doesn't care to see himself through the eyes of other people. And through this small interaction that...
That's actually a crazy way to look at it, but it's so true. Isn't there like a term for like somebody that's for a person that acts that way? Isn't there like a term for that? Let me know. But that's actually, oh my god, that's so fucking facts.
That Daya depicted, Jazzy went on to describe what it was that made that distinction so prominent. Sonic is unburdened by his past and always lives in the present, while Shadow's character is constantly weighed down by his past and those he has lost.
Yes, indeed.
While Sonic defines himself by his carefree nature and is driven by moment-to-moment actions, Shadow often defines himself by the circumstances of his creation and is motivated by his promise to Maria.
Right.
But this comparative analysis of their characters isn't exactly what I want to focus on. There's this larger point that Jazzy makes that really got my gears turning about other characters and their dynamics. Going off of the Shadow...
I want to read this. Hold on. I want to read this. I was not expecting this video to do this. I was just not expecting for us to be having this conversation. Hello. I'm definitely here for it though. Sonic's entirely natural ability mirrors Shadow's entirely artificial ability. Shadow woke up after 50 years believing he was the most powerful creature on Earth, handmade by genius and based on a mural that foretold Supersonic. Right, of course. Which goes with the whole nature versus like technology thing aspect with Sonic and Shadow, which is just so fucking good. When he finds that Sonic is on par and even beyond his own abilities despite how much less Sonic physically has, Shadow's aggression towards Sonic becomes a mechanism to keep himself believing that he is the ultimate life form, a belief that defines his attitude towards Sonic when deep down he knows Sonic is always a step ahead. Okay, always becoming better, always being better, always the true ultimate life form. Well, goddamn. I just spilled over the fucking bottle. And it keeps going. Every time Shadow sees Sonic's smug expression, his unbreakable sense of self and justice, Shadow is unsettled by his ability to only see what he was supposed to be. Oh god. Shadow may have similar physical traits to Sonic, but he can never beat the foretold Super Sonic. Oh my god. That's why characters like Metal Sonic and Surge are also weaved into this. Okay, I don't know anything about Surge. We're getting through the IDW stuff, you know what I'm saying? Check out the playlist if you haven't already. Also weaved into this. Metal and Surge are made to be duplicates of Sonic and thus never can live up to what Sonic is supposed to be and what he is capable of, but they also can't see what Shadow sees, which makes the Sonic and Shadow dynamic more unique. Wow. They also can't see what Shadow sees, which makes... Yeah, that's crazy. But we need to look up this whole thread. I ain't gonna lie. Yeah, I ain't gonna lie. We need to look this person up. Who are you? He's probably gonna go through this. If he does, then that's fine. But we won't stop to read every time. But hold on, just in case he doesn't. Shadow's discomfort knowing Sonic is everything he's supposed to be adds depth to every aspect of their relationship. Yeah, it's actually really fucking crazy. You was based off of supposedly. We gotta do that. I forgot. We gotta make that a video. I need to go over that fucking journal, bro. Gero's journal, I haven't touched it at all. We need to go over that shit. Supposedly, you know what I'm saying, he was based off of the mural of Supersonic. And it's like, the nigga's right there in front of you. That's him. Like, that's it right there. You know? But it's also like, damn, I can't believe that my goal is this guy and all he cares about is adventure. And I just can't get down with that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's just not me at all. Like, that's really fucking crazy, bro. It's not just rivalry. It's Shadow always trying to prove to himself that he is more than the legend he's built to be. That he's different. Of course. This desire to be more than the legend haunts his every action, especially when paired with Maria's promise. How can he protect the world and live up to the inspiration for his own existence if he cannot be better than that inspiration? That's why he's always dismissive and aggressive towards Sonic, because he can't stand seeing what he's supposed to be better in every way. It's why he always takes pride in any win over Sonic, even down to a simple inconvenience for Sonic like less cheese on a chili dog. Shadow wants to be better than Sonic because it heals his major insecurity, and it annoys him when Sonic continues to best him with nothing but a cheeky grin and flashy red shoes type shit. No background, no family other than the one he's forged himself. Complete and utter freedom. No catch to any of it. Sonic has no goals and no obstacles to overcome, but Shadow is burdened by his past, promise, and security. Sonic being both everything Shadow is supposed to be, but also far from who Shadow is, unsettles and angers Shadow. Okay. That mortal's cocky smile and recklessness angers the immortal, because it's a mockery of the man-made God in the face of essentially Mother Nature's Jesus. Yo, this is fucking crazy. Yeah, Shadow has a superiority complex. That's basically what this is, which makes sense. And it's not like based off of like arrogance or pride. Well, kind of like pride, but like it's not like a Vegeta type beat. Based on like what I was created to be, I should be better than this. It's crazy. It's just not arrogance, you know? It's just not like arrogance. And I hate when they make him arrogant, because that shit's just stupid. That's just not his character at all. And mainly me, like, I have hard times like putting it to words, but this person's kind of like putting it together like really fucking well. Like really fucking well. But I feel like the fact that like it's hard to explain just shows how subtle it is, you know? And I feel like it's a good thing that it is that way. But let's get back to the video.
Going off of the Shadow is based off of Supersonic theory, they point out that Shadow's perceived unsettlement towards who Sonic has to do with the nature of their existence. Shadow was artificially created to be the ultimate life form, specifically designed in someone else's image, engineered with an alien race's DNA, all to fulfill two very specific purposes by two very separate people. And along comes Sonic, someone who is, by all accounts, Shadow's equal, but instead was born naturally and manages to do the right thing by his own determination, through no one else's expectation, who has no external destiny he was born into. Shadow was born into his purpose and is at times all he knows. Sonic, meanwhile, has no designated purpose. He goes where the wind takes him and does what he believes to be morally correct. Exactly. In essence, Sonic is Shadow without any of the circumstances around Shadow, and this is what makes their rivalry work. But part of that larger point was mentioning how this dynamic also extends to Metal Sonic and the IDW character Surge the Tenric, both who were more directly engineered as copies of Sonic. The thing I found most fascinating about this comparison is that they're all characters based on Sonic in their own unique way. Metal Sonic was created to equal Sonic's abilities, but this created in Metal a sense of self that wanted to prove he was a superior version of Sonic, and thus the true Sonic. Surge, at least from what I understand, was conditioned to mimic Sonic's personality, but was pushed to a twisted
Fuck. Okay, he's going into the Surge stuff a little bit, you know what I'm saying? I'ma just close my eyes and listen for a second.
Extreme, to the point that it's almost difficult to see how the two are even alike, unless you get down to nuance. Shadow, meanwhile, again, if we're taking the Supersonic theory into account, was purely designed in Sonic's image, physically. Gerald never knew Sonic, so there was nothing he could base Shadow's abilities or personality on, and yet there are so many ways in which they're so similar to each other.
Right.
I loved how these characters were all linked to Sonic, but were still very much their own character. Despite the possibility of all being inspired by Sonic, none of them really feel like him or like each other.
All the battles back.
And that made me think about the bosses we know we're going to fight in the upcoming Shadow generations. They all share a very similar dynamic.
Upcoming? When was this video? 12 days ago. He must have recorded this like way before.
Are different versions of Shadow. The first boss we knew about, and likely the first boss we'll fight in Shadow's campaign, is the Biolizard, the prototype of the ultimate life form. While physically neither of them really share any qualities, they both share an origin. Professor Gerald Robotnik artificially created them as part of Project Shadow to develop a cure for his granddaughter's disease. Similarly, the one ability they're both shown to share is Chaos Control, though we know that the Biolizard also has a new pair of wings that allows it to fly, similar to Shadow's new Doom Wings. Sharing a past, it is thought that both of them were also based off of murals that Gerald learned about while he was visiting Angel Island. Again, this is...
Oh, that's what the message at the beginning was? The video was written and recorded before? Oh, I see. I didn't read any of that.
Never been directly confirmed, but the fact that the cannon's core was designed to look like
the I shall now leave my comment about, hey, the game's out type shit. Like, what are you talking about type shit? like most niggas do on this fucking website.
Again, this has never been directly confirmed, but the fact that the cannon's core was designed to look like the Master Emerald Shrine to harness the power of the Chaos Emeralds, it's pretty safe to assume that there's a lot more that Gerald knew about beyond just the shrine.
Which is why the whole mural theory just makes too much fucking sense, and I hope it's in that journal.
First level we'll play through in Shadow Generations is the Space Colony Arc, which by way of an illusion morphs into a strange version of Radical Highway. And I think the level choices in this game to represent Shadow's past have a thematic purpose to them that weave into the bosses Shadow will fight as well. While it's true that Radical Highway is an iconic Shadow level in its own right, I think it's also representative of Shadow's motivation before we learn the truth about Maria's wish. Right before we play the stage, Shadow exclaims that he promises Maria that he'll exact revenge on humanity, and the name of the track played during Radical Highway is called Vengeance is Mine. While the Biolizard has nothing to do with Radical Highway in a literal sense, we know that the Biolizard was encapsulated with all the hatred Gerald was left with after the Ark was shut down and Maria was killed. His plan after the fact was to reprogram the Eclipse Cannon's activation to collide with the Earth and use the Biolizard as a final roadblock should anyone try to stop the Ark's collision course. The prototype was basically motivated by revenge, even if it had no concept of it. Both Shadow and the Biolizard were born on the Ark. Both suffered greatly, and both were motivated by revenge. It's no wonder that the Biolizard represents Shadow's past, both in a literal sense and a figurative one. What really got me thinking about this link between the level and the boss was the level they chose to represent Shadow's adventure in Sonic Heroes, Rail Canyon. After defeating this level's boss, the Egg Albatross, Shadow comes across the top half of a Shadow android, though the reason why this happens here of all places isn't exactly clear unless you stop to think about what the Chaotix do here in their version of Bullet Station, Rail Canyon 2nd.
With the capsules.
The mysterious client they work for instructs them to destroy the same capsules as the ones that hold the Shadow androids, with Espio calling them the Secret Weapons Capsule. During their fight with the Egg Albatross, the client mentions that the secret weapons must be aboard the ship, which, as we see after Team Dark's fight, happens to be true, but without each other's context, this cutscene, and therefore this story element, makes a little less sense. At this point, we have no idea what a Shadow android is, or why there's a robot that looks like Shadow here, because while it's implied at the beginning of Team Dark's story, the big reveal of the mass-produced androids isn't revealed until the end of their campaign. But not only is this cutscene and therefore this location where we find out about the Shadow androids, it's also where we find out that Neo Metal Sonic has copied Shadow's ultimate lifeform data. In the 3DS version of Sonic Generations, Sonic fights the Biolizard, a fight that was originally Shadow's, and Shadow Generations features something similar. Shadow now fights Metal Overlord, a battle originally fought by the Super version of Team Sonic. What I find curious about this is that both fights are almost directly the inverse of each other. The Biolizard has a subsequent fight in the form of the Final Hazard, who was fought by Sonic, and Metal Overlord has a previous fight in the form of Metal Madness, who was fought by Shadow. But more than anything, what I believe to be the reason for Metal Overlord's inclusion is precisely what he represents as part of Shadow's story. Considering that Shadow was believed to be dead at this point, the implication that he could instead be a robotic doppelganger was a very real one. We didn't have any hard confirmation one way or the other yet, especially because
even that I just didn't know. It's like, oh, Shadow's just a robot now, huh?
The ultimate expression of Metal Sonic's autonomy, and possibly the first time in game.
Y'all think if they would have y'all think they really committed to that timeline or that like plot point? I think it could have been kind of interesting. I think it could have been very interesting if they just like stuck with that and kept it going instead of just being like, oh, he's just not an android. Actually, we kind of lied.
Sonic. At this point, Shadow and Metal Sonic likely felt the same, that they weren't real. What's interesting about them too is that they also share similar, albeit very separate, origins. They're artificial beings built by a Robotnik, both shaped after the same subject. Both heavily struggle with their sense of identity. Do the circumstances of one's creation validate their sense of reality?
Boom!
Does the fact that they were created, not born, mean that they're not real? These story elements on Shadow's end were more prevalent during his own game, but I still think they ring true. There are 2 endings in which Shadow believes himself to be a Shadow android, created in the image of the original Shadow, and both of them heavily mirror what Metal Sonic's goal is in Heroes. In the neutral Dark ending, Shadow claims he'll use the Chaos Emeralds to become even stronger than the original Shadow, whereas in the neutral Hero ending, he claims he'll use them to take over the Eggman Empire and take over the world alongside his fellow androids, which we learn is another of Metal's goals after you defeat Metal Mantis with Team Dark.
How appropriate to have a robot overlord rule a robot kingdom.
What's more, both of those endings, along with
a
one
robot
other,
kingdom,
are the only ones
is
in
crazy.
which Shadow strikes down Eggman after his defeat, further mirroring Metal Sonic's betrayal in Heroes. And of all the abilities Metal copies, the only one that we really see in action is Chaos Control, marking him as the first new character we ever see perform the move post-Adventure 2. In fact, this factors into his fight in Shadow Generations because using Chaos Control during the fight effectively does nothing, since Metal Overlord can use the ability even without the Chaos Emeralds. Kingdom Valley is yet another level that I believe is particularly significant for Shadow, more than any other level in Sonic 06. In Adventure 2, Radical Highway feels like the level with the most thematic significance to me. White Jungle is where we first see that Shadow may be more than he appears, but it feels like it mostly serves as a parallel to Sonic's Green Forest. Skyrail is just him chasing Tails to inform Eggman of where they're going, and Final Chase is him going to meet Sonic for their final encounter. In Heroes, Rail Canyon Bullet Station is really the only level that feels significant to Shadow specifically, even though other levels may have tiny tidbits of Shadow saying things that give us insight as to what's crossing his mind. In 06, there are a few levels that are important to the story as well, such as Aquatic Base being where he steals Mephiles, or Flame Core being where he first fights Mephiles, but more than that, I believe that Kingdom Valley is the most significant because it's where he first meets Mephiles, and is where Mephiles copies Shadow's form. It's also the first time that we see a proper reunion between Shadow, Rouge, and Dr. Eggman.
I'm assuming since this was recorded beforehand that he's going to talk about, oh, well, Mephiles got to be in the game. Well, no. Yeah, is this before he... I'm assuming this is before... No, this might be after Mephiles even got revealed in those trailers, huh?
Who tells them about the Solaris Project, an experimental program using a prototype energy engine which resulted in an accident that killed many of the people involved, causing the location to be abandoned, much like Project Shadow and the Ark. But if these parallels are significant, why not use Aquatic Base instead of Kingdom Valley? Shadow and Silver's Aquatic Base takes place right after this accident happened. Well, I believe the reason to be precisely because Kingdom Valley represents what was left of the Solaris Project. This is where the ruins stand today, a product of what happened in the past. While you can go to the space colony Ark and never suspect what happened there, it's clear that something awful happened in Kingdom Valley that caused it to be abandoned. Unlike the Ark, which fully represents Shadow's past, Kingdom Valley represents a present that Shadow is unfamiliar with. And yet, it makes Mephiles' story mirror Shadow's, being sealed away for years after the accident and harboring a sense of revenge. Though I mentioned that Flame Core is significant because it's the place where Mephiles transforms into his more iconic design and is where you first fight as Shadow, the Mephiles boss fight is based on their second encounter at the end of Shadow's story after Dusty Desert, and I think the reason they chose this fight over their previous one is not only due to the finality of it, but because it represents both of their intentions at this point in the story. Originally, one could think that Mephiles' motivation was revenge for the torture he endured during the Solaris Project. One could think that his motivations lie with something Sonic does that we haven't seen yet. Or one could think he simply wants to reform with Iblis to create Solaris. But during their last encounter, it's perfectly clear that Mephiles isn't driven by any of this. He only craves destruction. Despite his evident intelligence, he isn't motivated by any external factor,
a fucking
and
bastard.
He can corrupt Shadow.
He's an absolute asshole. And I love it. Man, a lot of people felt bad for this nigga, man. A nigga like me, I'm glad. I'm glad you don't exist, motherfucker. I lie. I want him to come back. But I don't feel bad for him. I don't feel bad for him, people. Let's keep it a buck. He 1000% deserves it. Like, I want to exist. Like, yeah, alright. Yeah, okay. Get back in the scepter, bro. Put the fries in the bag, man.
Shadow into helping him achieve the senseless goal. He doesn't need Shadow in order
really
to accomplish
fucking cool,
this,
though.
but I think his attempts at getting Shadow to side with him have to do precisely with his revenge, to convince Shadow to do something Mephiles knows he doesn't actually want to do. What's also interesting is that throughout this entire scenario, there's no mention of Shadow's past. Originally developed as a reboot, it seemed strange for some to see Shadow working with Gun, who had caused him so much pain previously.
Yeah.
It called into question if past
I
events were
like
even
it though, and
considered
I
for
don't
the
know
story.
why.
And
but
yet,
I just
there are
love
still
that.
obvious
I don't know
connections
why.
to the games that came before it. the camaraderie between the members of Team Dark, the dynamic with Team Sonic, Sonic knowing how to perform Chaos Control, and in particular, there's a set of items you can buy as Shadow known as the Memory Shards, which each give Shadow a new level of Chaos Boost, enhancing his ability.
Wait, no, now that we know that Abe is like, you know what I'm saying, cool with Shadow, he probably could just be doing that as a favor, working with Gun, you know? But I could definitely see, like, knowing that Abe is there and it's like, yeah, like, we got you, gang. Like, but also, like, we're cool, so you want to do this mission for us type shit. You throw you some money.
There are 3 to collect, and each are a color reminiscent of the...
Why is he... 06 is a fucking joke, man.
Ones that represent Shadow in his own game. The blue memory shard allows Shadow to perform Chaos Snap, a quicker version of Chaos Control. The red memory shard allows him to perform the Chaos Lance, a more powerful version of his Chaos Spear, and the black memory shard allows him to use his Chaos Blast. Now, it doesn't exactly line up with his gauges in Shadow the Hedgehog, but I understand why it was done the way it was. His hero gauge was blue and allowed him to use Chaos Control, whereas his dark gauge was red, letting him use Chaos Blast, and his Chaos Spear didn't really require a gauge. Chaos Snap, meanwhile, is a good opener, which makes sense as a level 1 Chaos Boost ability. Chaos Lance is good for combos, so makes sense as a level 2 ability, and finally Chaos Blast makes sense as a finisher for level 3. I just would have changed the memory shard colors to better fit how they were in the last game. And the reason I'm even talking about Shadow's Chaos Boost abilities in 06 is because using Chaos Boost is the only way for Shadow to actually fight Mephiles. As well, using Chaos Boost makes Shadow radiate a red glow, similar to how he looks when you activate Dark Shadow in the last game. And mind you, I don't think this was intentional at all, but it's cool to think that this is fighting fire with fire in a way. The only way to fight against this hatred-fueled darkness is to unleash your own hateful darkness.
Type shit.
And yet, Shadow's motivation...
We know that's not how that happened in the game, but... Or
the reason I brought up the fact that Shadow's past isn't ever talked about in the events of 06 is because where Mephiles has no reason to want to cause destruction, having put his past behind him in his own game, you can interpret Shadow's motivation to save the world as also being without reason. Nothing he does in 06 is for Maria, at least not that we know of, and he was given plenty of opportunity to claim this. If anything, what he does is more akin to Sonic's motivations. He's doing what he truly thinks is right, even if others disagree. It's also worth mentioning that Sonic and Shadow are so in sync in this game that this is the first time since Shadow debuted that the two don't fight or compete with each other at all. Which brings me to my next point, Sonic. Sonic is an interesting one because we've already discussed why...
Should have been the boss, should have been a rubber fight, should have been something. Anything.
Why the two are so similar, but thinking about their fight on the Ark and what it means for Shadow's story adds a layer to their dynamic. And I think it all goes back to Daya's comic. Sonic is, in a way, a deconstruction of Shadow. Sonic represents the ways in which Shadow is wrong about his worldview and about himself. In Adventure 2, even before this encounter, Shadow saw something special about Sonic, and it's only reinforced after he finds out that Sonic survived the exploding capsule. But the truth is, there is nothing special about Sonic. He just is. And I think that we can observe that Shadow's personality is a lot closer to Sonic's once his past isn't something that occupies his mind. In Heroes and in Shadow, though he's motivated by learning about...
He's saying this, bro. They're the fucking same, bro. They're the same person. It's like the same. They're just also very fucking
his
different.
Past and who he used to be, he's also a lot more carefree. He still broods, sure, especially in his own game, but he's a lot more willing to engage in banter than he did previously, especially the more confident he becomes. There's a line in Heroes that further cements this relationship between the two that gets lost in translation. Before their second fight in the Japanese version of Adventure 2, Sonic claims that the reason he survived the exploding capsule is because he's stubborn, and once he sees Shadow again in Heroes, he calls back to this moment by saying that they both have the advantage of being stubborn, both having managed to evade death. And it's worth noting that in Heroes, he has no concept of Maria, Gerald, or even the Ark, but he has this native determination and confidence near the end. Right before the level Egg Fleet, Shadow acknowledges the possibility of being an android, but doesn't really believe that changes anything about him. Android or not, he's still Shadow the Hedgehog, and maintains the drive to help his friends achieve their goals. Rouge in finding Eggman's treasure, and Omega in destroying Eggman and his fleet. At this point, Shadow may not have the answers he was looking for, but is also aware he may not find them on this quest, and is at peace with that. That doesn't mean he'll never learn about his origins, just that he won't right now. In turn, something really curious happens in his own game, most prominently in the canonical last story segment. Throughout most of the other paths, Shadow has been susceptible to circumstance. What he finds out about himself is what guides what he decides to do once he collects all the emeralds at the end. But the more you veer towards a heroic ending, particularly the last story, the more Shadow rejects this notion, using them for what he truly believes in. In certain story paths, Shadow goes along with Black Doom mostly because he believes him to have the answers Shadow seeks, and in others, he resigns himself to retribution, making it his mission to collect the emeralds to make up for what happened aboard the Ark as a result of his creation. In the last story, though,
those are like the best
neither of
endings,
these are really true, and this is something I believe is crucial to his character and makes him and Sonic so alike. While it can be argued that Shadow's morals are the way they are because he's bound to Maria's wish, here we see that it's more of a choice than a commitment. He wants to live up to what Gerald created him for, not because it's his purpose, but because he wants to help Maria. But at the same time, he doesn't owe Maria anything. He does it because it's the right thing to do. On the other side of the coin, we can see exactly why this is. Black Doom helped with Shadow's creation under the condition that he help him get the Chaos Emeralds so that the Black Arms could come to Earth and harvest human beings as energy sources. This is also Shadow's purpose, but it's one he's visibly distraught by and actively rejects. In the ending to each path, Shadow feels the need to proclaim who he is, because this journey is all about discovering that for Shadow. But in the last story, there's no need. He shows us who he is. He doesn't defy Black Doom because it's what he was made for, he does it because it's what he believes is the right thing to do. Maria's wish may be what drives him to achieve this, but it has nothing to do with any purpose he was designed for.
Right.
And so Sonic is most like him for this very reason. Like I said, Gerald never met Sonic. He didn't design Shadow to be like him. It's a coincidence that they both share this instinct to do the right thing, and their fight aboard the Ark represents this. Their first fight, the one on Prison Island, was one of circumstance. There was no reason for them to go at each other other than because they wanted to. They were clearly adversaries, yes, but they could have ignored each other the way Shadow does when they first meet. On the Ark, however, this is a battle of ideals as well. They're both fighting to achieve what they believe is correct.
That is very true. They really did not fight on that island, bro. Because Shadow had to go somewhere. He was like, hey, man, look, fuck the mission. Let's see what this blue-ass nigga got, bro.
Sonic to save the world, Shadow to avenge Maria.
And
I believe this element will turn out to be similar in Sonic X Shadow Generations. They're both fighting to save the world, but both have their own reasons for fighting. In Sonic Generations, Shadow admits that he doesn't understand where they are, but that it doesn't matter to him, also claiming that Sonic is finally here, meaning that he's been waiting to fight Sonic again. It may be that he believes that part of the solution in Shadow Generations is defeating...
Yeah, that line is like so weird now because that's just not like what happened. It's just kind of not what happened at all.
Sonic, and Sonic needs the Chaos Emeralds to take on the Time Eater. Again, both are fighting for something they truly believe to be correct, it's just that the circumstances are different. Both of them are facing separate but very real threats, and I'm excited to see how this goes down in Shadow's version of events. Speaking of threats...
And we know how it goes down, and I think it was done very, very well, very masterfully. Shadow literally needs the Chaos Emerald to stop Black Doom, and Sonic's like, hey, I kind of need that as well, gang. Fuck it, let's fight for it. Let's just fight for it.
Though I have no idea what this biblically accurate Black Doom creature is, I honestly believe that it ties into the theme of being Shadow as well, but in a slightly different way. In Sonic Adventure 2's final stage, Canon's Core, you can find time switches that temporarily stop time, but allow the user to continue moving. While just a gameplay gimmick that is otherwise not explained anywhere, it's possible that these were developed to test out the effects of chaos control, and the only reason I bring this up is because these time switches bear a suspicious resemblance to whatever this floating Black Doom egg is. And the only reason I call it an egg is because we can see throughout the story trailer that it starts fully sealed, and near what I presume is the end, we can see tentacles emerging from it. Now, whether Devil Doom is what emerges from it or something else we've yet to learn about is unknown, but I think that the egg looking like the time switches isn't a coincidence, particularly because this whole game is about time travel. Now, regardless of if it is Devil Doom or not, I do think Shadow's final boss will be some version of Black Doom, who represents why Shadow can do the things he does. If Mephiles is a rejection of what Shadow could be, Black Doom is a rejection of what Shadow is meant to be. I'm going to say something that I know is pretty controversial given how many times I've seen others say this, but I do not think the Doom powers are permanent. I'll refrain from expressing my opinions on why I'm okay with this and focus more on what points to this being the case.
Well, you're calling it because he definitely loses them motherfuckers. While we may have at first believed that the Doom powers were something that was awoken within Shadow's Black Arms DNA, we're shown that it's more likely that these powers are forced upon him, evidenced by Shadow's line, "Yeah, guys, I wish we got the fucking fight, bro. I wish we got the boss fight, but alas. Gotta move on, chat. Maybe next time. Maybe next time. game.
That it's more likely that these powers are forced upon him, evidenced by Shadow's
Maybe in
line,
Adventure 3.
I'll take this power and use it as my own.
Another thing to note is that, at least for Shadow's Doomwings, they seem to be painful to use and seem to function more as a means to an end. It's possible that once Black Doom is defeated, the powers go along with him, or even that Shadow's stripped of them before the final encounter. Not to mention a key detail, they're not Black Arm's powers, but Doom powers specifically. These powers make Shadow more like Black Doom, and I just can't see that being something Shadow would want. If anything, it might be like what was mentioned in the Mephiles fight, using fire to fight fire. Thematically, I also believe it's important for Shadow to prove that in order to be the ultimate life form, he needs to defeat Black Doom by being who he is, rather than what Black Doom wants him to be. And let me be clear, if you ask me what I objectively think they would do from a gameplay standpoint, I don't actually believe you'd fight the final boss without the Doom powers. You spend the whole game acquiring them, and though I think it would be cool to have to fight with your base abilities, I understand why they wouldn't do it like this. If anything, I can almost see them going down the Super Sonic 2 route, where Shadow would have to unleash an ultimate Doom Shadow form or something, where he pushes these abilities to their limit, but that's more wishful thinking than anything else.
Yeah, we would have got like Doom Shadow, like Devil Doom Shadow, that would have been fire. But him just doing like the Doom Wings and stuff, I think that's fine enough. Yeah, I think that's cool enough. It would have been sick though, I ain't gonna lie.
Either way, I'm confident
sick.
that whatever Shadow's final encounter is like, it'll be something action-packed, cool as hell, and for the purposes of this video, thematically significant to him, to the point that it will further help Shadow heal. Shadow the Hedgehog, the video game, was all about Shadow literally rediscovering who he was so he can determine who he really is. Sonic Generations is about celebrating 20 years of Sonic the Hedgehog's history. And what's cool about what I think Shadow Generations is gonna be is that it's almost a combination of both. Celebrating Shadow's history while putting a mirror up to him from a narrative perspective to show him who he could have been. And to further reflect his own game, we're likely not going to learn anything new about Shadow. Much like his story in Sonic 06, I think Shadow's going to once again show us who he is. And I think that'll be why it's easier for him to let go of Gerald and Maria at the end. In the same way that it's pointless to look at
shit was not easy for that nigga, I'll tell you what. That shit was not easy, bro.
all these bosses and think of what could have been, he can't cling on to what his life could have been if he hadn't lost them. More than put his past behind him, he needs to accept what his reality is and carry on. And damn, I don't know if that's what they're gonna do, but I guess we'll find out after we play Shadow Generations.
He goddamn called it pretty much. He goddamn called it. Yeah, shit. Yeah. It was a good ass video, man. I'm really interested in this first bit though. That was like a really good little like introduction to all this. And I like how he tied it into like the boss and stuff too. But like, yeah, it's really crazy to just think of like how complex the dynamic between these two are, man. It's just so fucking good, bro. It's so good. It's just it's more than meets the eye, and I love it. I just love it for that, you know. Definitely love it for that. Yeah, that W video, definitely W video.